How old do you think you are? The government is.
Bienvenue. Welcome once again to Property Quorum, the show where we get property professionals to discuss topics of the moment. Andy Burnham, reform and everything else notwithstanding, and extreme heat. Let's get through this today. Of course, I have to introduce you once again to Hamish McClay of Slope Bay, man who helped start this. Our tame legal eagle, Zara Olibokus of Nexa Law, and Silas J. Lees, social commentator, property specialist, and owner of what's the Maverick Movement. Good Lord. Less said about that, the better. But we should also talk about WigglyWam, one of the best property specialist websites available. Please do go and check out WigglyWam. But to start us off today, let's talk about what the topic is. Today's topic is the reform returns. Good Lord, does it indeed? And to start it off, Hamish McClay.
Well, good morning to you all. I trust many of you can actually enjoy the weather. I know some of us sort of suffer with the heat. Some of us enjoy it. I happen to enjoy it.
Yes.
See from the sunshine blistering through the woods behind me. Isn't that great? Anyway, lovely day, lovely weather, if we can take advantage of it. And I don't think many of us can take advantage from this announcement, really, from the HMCLG, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, because unfortunately, under their umbrella now, there is just far, far too much for them to be able to sort of cope with. And the sad thing, too, is we don't necessarily know which specialists they are working with when they maintain that they are working with various people within the availability of data and all the rest of it. We're fortunate through one of my organizations, of which I'm chairman, that we do attend the various meetings relative to what we do as personal search agents, as one of the sort of backdrops of what we do. And one of the challenges that we've actually sort of found that we get the same idea sort of coming through. It wasn't as apparent when home information packs arrived, but it's more as sort of apparent now that there's pressure on to try and actually remove the human element, because it's maintained it's the human element that slows things down. It's not the human element that slows things down. It's the interconnectability of that human element, because too many other things have cluttered up and got in the way. And the biggest challenge is the loudest noises being made out there are by really software providers and people of that particular nature. And if you look at some of the epic sort of projects that are going on, there's a project sort of 28 attempting to do things within 28 days, initiated by LAM. Who are they speaking to? And you look at the number of people who've actually signed up to Project 28, which I did the other day there. Again, NIPS are also members of that. But we looked at, and there didn't seem to be any representation from solicitors at all, from estate agents. And we've got a situation here that the government are trying to impose certain things on both estate agents and on solicitors. And they're trying to do it, I think, by bringing in some kind of regulation. But who are they going to be able to sort of help the most? Are they going to help the true professionals out there, like Zara, like sort of Silas? Well, not so much Silas now, because he's not working as an estate agent, but he's trying to support estate agents. So what benefits can we actually see at the moment from this particular announcement?
Well, oh my goodness. What a way to start off the show. Silas, what are your thoughts?
Well, good morning, Gareth. I have a lot of thoughts on this particular topic, and I'll just share a few of them to get the conversation started. Obviously, we had the announcement last week that the housing market is going to be reformed. Not quite yet. It's going to be in 2029, which is right on the cusp of the end of this current regime's reign in power. And then, of course, within 24 hours of the working week, we had the resignation of the Prime Minister, kind of throwing the government into chaos, kind of leading to a new leadership challenge.
But ultimately inevitable.
Ultimately inevitable. And what is interesting is if you looked at all the sound bites that were going on Thursday, Friday of last week, we had an apparent unanimity within the property profession across all sectors. Everybody's saying amazing changes here. Finally, the government's listening. The housing market's going to be better for everybody in a few years' time. And I thought this was quite interesting that not only was all this hullabaloo made around this announcement, but who was actually making those announcements and what was their vested interest in doing so. And one of the things that most don't realize is that the government has given significant sums of money, of taxpayer money, to some of these various bodies in order to fund research or try and find a way forward with the solutions to the current crisis, when a lot of these solutions already exist. That's the first point I want to make. And secondly, to follow up on what Hamish was saying, is that removing the human element from this process, in my mind, actually speaks to disaster. Yes, we can all benefit from AI. We're all using AI. We all see the power of AI. But AI is not on the ground understanding what's happening with local water and drainage searches. It's not on the ground understanding that if I go to a property in Stoke, for example, there's a very good chance if I walk across the concrete floor, it's bowing in the middle, and any other surveyor from out of the area is going to go, oh my God, this is a major problem. The house is falling down. And local surveyors will know that that's probably not actually a problem. We just need to relay the concrete floor slab and remove the aggregate underneath it. And those are just a couple of examples of some of the things that are happening. And you have to ask the question, as Hamish has quite rightly done, who are these people within government who are making these decisions actually listening to? Because there's absolute uproar within the conveyancing profession as to their voice isn't being heard at all. The people on the ground, as I'm sure Zara will probably back me up on this point, but the people on the ground who are doing the work, dealing with the clients face-to-face, are not being listened to. And that's a problem when you're trying to reform a market as big as the British housing market.
Zara, are people just not listening?
That's absolutely correct what Silas is saying. The people who call themselves conveyancers that are whispering things, sweet nothings into the government ears, they are people who haven't been in practice for a long time. So they don't know the heartache and the pain that people go through. And it's not about shuffling information. They seem to make it about bits of paper to do with fences certificates, gas certificates. It's not about that. The heartache that I see is that, people haven't had proper legal advice. Let me give you an example. Shared ownership. People have entered into these agreements and not realised what it actually means. And just to give you an example, I've had a lady trying to sell her flat for the last 4 years, and it's just not shifting, because the way that the agreements work is that she has to sell for a valuation that random surveyors given the housing association, and the housing association is saying that if she doesn't cough up the difference, she can't sell it, she can't go to auction, and she's desperate to move. Another case I had last week, which I didn't realise, lady contacted me to say, well, look, my flats in my area, shared ownership, 1-bedroom flats, they're all going on the portals. Housing association are ignoring the provisions in the lease to find her a buyer. They're just saying go to an estate agent. But her monthly rent is significantly higher than other flats in her area. Now, she bought in 2006. So, look, I'm not a financial expert, but I do understand compounding, which means that your rent gets added when it goes up, and it's calculated in a formula, it gets added on top of the next lot. So her rent is significantly higher than somebody else's. Lenders are now waking up to the fact that service charges are uncapped. So, regardless of putting all this information into a little box to shuffle along, it's still not going to help people enter into deals, because I speak to a lot of people that have no idea what leasehold is. I speak to a lot of people that don't understand service charges, and I've had it in writing from an estate agent that sellers told her that her service charges are only £200 a year. And I don't know what planet she was living on, but that didn't sound right. And when I looked at all the information, her service charges were actually £1,200 a year. So we've got this kind of thing going on where the estate agent is relying on information from the seller and not verifying it for themselves. So, you know, putting things into pretty little packages, I'm going to call it a Trojan horse. It looks fantastic. It sounds fantastic. The sound bites are all there, but the devil will be in the detail. My concern is that people will be asked to sign reservation agreements, and some of these companies out there are very litigious, and they will take you for all you've got just because you changed your mind. And the money is controlled by the estate agents. So if you decide to walk away, the estate agent keeps your money. I think estate agents need to change the way they price. Same with conveyancers. If they want people to look at their packs up front, you know, they have this in Australia. My sister is a qualified Australian lawyer. They have these disclosure packs, but they have a different legal system. They don't have leasehold. But, you know, a lot of buyers won't go to a lawyer to have the information checked. And so they're left backpedaling within a short time frame to sort things out for people.
Hamish, it seems to me, if I'm going to be mischievous about it, people should do more research before they start signing stuff off. But yet, Zara keeps telling us she tells them, she begs them to listen, and they end up taking no notice and just running roughshod because they're so keen to get the keys in the house.
I think this is one of the sad aspects about it. What we can do is we can speed up an awful lot of things which are going on. I mean, Silas and I have been speaking about this for sort of quite a long time. We've actually carried out some interesting research, more so Silas, to show what actually sort of can be done. But all we can do is make sure of that initial data. There's so much more to it. And this is the challenge of this buying and selling process, that ours is unique in this country because of the complications of our law. They're different. Like, as people will say, oh, we ought to do what the Australians do. We ought to do what the Norwegians do. We ought to do what the Americans do. But there's a whole load of difference. They don't have properties like ours. There are various things that could actually be brought along. But interesting thing to say, that the last time we had this inertia, if you like, not from the MHCLG at that particular sort of time, but there was a Labour government in place, and they were the ones that initiated it, the upfront information. They called it home information packs. Hip, hip, hooray. And that was a complete and utter bloody shambles, that was, for an awful lot of reasons, because that let far too many people coming in just for the money. That was the one that brought we can get you quick searches. We'll get somebody on a motorbike and they'll just sort of jump around from all these different towns. They knew nothing about the properties they were gathering that information on. Yet there are people, qualified people out there, professionals. And at the same time, the early 2000s wasn't a good place really for lawyers, because we had the change, or the impressional change within the law, where it was suggested that, anybody can carry out composite conveyancing. Can they? Heck. Whew. No,
Wow.
the big problem is you cannot just unleash things like this. There is the whole conveyancing is far too deep just to speed it up on the front, like we're trying to do on the front line, and try to get all those funny little things, as Zara sort of said, they're just sticking them in little boxes and saying, there you go. That does not speed things up. That can complicate things. If that data is nobody's actually defined as whether it's accurate or not. It hasn't been refined at all.
Silas, there seems to be a fine line between under-regulation and, for instance, the ridiculous unregulated way in which service charges are put together, and over-regulation, whereby you end up with complaints that the government are trying to control our lives. So where's the fine line?
That is an excellent question, Gareth. And let's be frank, the only lever that government has to pull in all of this is regulation and legislation. That's all they can do. And what tends to happen is we end up with a number of bad actors who continually undermine the practice, the profession for the majority. Okay, and by doing so, you bring the whole market down. To my mind, this whole process can be sorted out with a little bit of tweaking on regulation. One of them being management companies and the speed at which they turn around information and the charges they're able to make as a result of that. Okay. The second thing that we must address, and this is a deeply, deeply unpopular comment to make, but I'm going to make it anyway. Every single solicitor that I talk to says we have to ban referral fees because it is sucking so much profit out of their jobs that all that money is going to the estate agent, and to the estate agents who are up in arms about the fact that I'm going to cut off their revenue stream, I'm not. If you look at the maths here, that you're sacrificing your average fee of £3,560 odd pounds for a £300 referral fee commission, it's absolutely nuts. Okay, we have panel management companies that are stripping value out at the front end for people that are trying to get their conveyance over the line. It's absolutely abhorrent practice, and that is something that the industry needs to be brave enough to ban. We've put all of our research in front of the Law Society and the CLC, and the response from the industry is we need more consultation around banning referral fees. Whereas Trading Standards said in 2022 that if transparency wasn't happening within the industry, then a ban ought to be called for. And that transparency isn't happening. I'm seeing referral fees up to £900 on a £1,500 conveyance. I've seen conveyancing fees on a purchase as low as £395. Okay, it is absolutely ridiculous. So the profession, unless we address the money issue, is the point I'm getting to, none of this reform is actually going to work. And you can put AI in, okay, as Zara has quite rightly made the point, if you put AI into a poor conveyancing process, you're just going to get more rubbish a lot faster. And that is the point nobody seems to be addressing. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Not at all. I see a comment that apparently I looked something straight out of the Hunger Games. Well, thank you very much. I'll take that as a compliment. All right, Zara, just following on some of the chats you've been saying to me in private chat and also in the green room. Regulators with no teeth are no regulators at all, right?
Yeah. I mean, just look at the BBC Panorama programme, where a certain corporate estate agent was, caught about their double bubble and how much money they were, their business model is referral fees. And the lady rolled her eyes at me last week because there was a big announcement about, another portal, in conjunction with a major lender. And I'm just sitting there thinking, why would major lenders be hooking up with these guys when they have no integrity? And, I did suggest that, most of the work that they would be getting in would be farmed out to those paying referral fees. And I got a big eye roll. And it's kind of like, I don't care. These conveyancers are mine. They do what I say. And it's just, conveyancers need to stand up for themselves and say enough is enough. It's not about estate agents losing money. We lose money too.
Right.
And what it's going to do is, push smaller firms that do a good job out of the market. So people will just be left with the giants who ignore calls and funnel people through, call centres. So you're never speaking to the same person twice, or they just don't respond and you're not going to get anywhere. So, whatever they're suggesting is not going to make the slightest bit of difference unless you have got somebody holding your hand all the way through the process, or you're educating people what they should be looking for in their conveyancer, their estate agent, and their mortgage brokers, and you put that person buying or selling in charge of their own team and say, right, you are the project manager, you want this done, you have to find a way to see it through and not rely on somebody to do it all for you. It's not going to get handed to you on a plate, which I think is what the government want to happen, is for people to do this and hand it out on a plate. But our job is to protect the public, and yet a lot of conveyancers are happy to look the other way as long as they're getting the work in. There was a discussion last week on referral fees, and I pointed out there's many who don't pay referral fees, which is great, but then you also get those situations where conveyances are recommended, and you have to kind of sit there and work out why those conveyances are recommended. For example, developer plot sales, and it's because the conveyancer knows they're going to get a certain income stream from regular work, so they're not going to do anything to upset that person. So you've got that conflict there as to, do you want to upset the person that refers you business, or are you happy to look the other way and not look after the person paying your bill? So there's there's a huge kind of ethics line there. And a lot of leaders out there, what should I say, they have FOMO because they think if they don't pay the referral fees, they're not going to get any work. But that, the opposite should be true, because you should be out there saying how great you are, what expertise you have,
Right.
And not just rely on somebody saying, yeah, use them, they're great. And somebody else tried to justify, well, they're not all that bad. You could potentially get a good service when you're paying a referral fee. I mean, that's the rarity, not the norm.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Zara.
Can I follow up on that point?
Oh my goodness! Come on, Silas, get on your orange box.
Very quickly. I've said for a while now that the people at the top are still getting paid regardless of whether or not people move home, and that's really what's happening with the referral fee system. But there is a silver lining which has come through, which is 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Property Ombudsman issued their very first fine for non-compliance with material information. And that's the heart of the regulation that is probably going to blow up in a lot of people's faces very soon, is that I can see where you've got people taking a referral fee and then they're not complying with the law. You've got a massive conflict of interest, which is only going to see them fined very heavily by the people like the Property Ombudsman or others, which is the bit that I'm not going to talk about at this point, because I do think that's what's going to come to force the change in the marketplace.
Wow, Hamish, what a busy property quorum we've had. Would you please care to take us home?
Well, I think this, to a large extent, it is up to the individuals within conveyancing to get their voices out there about professionalism and retaining that professionalism. Because we're going right back to home information packs, which was very much part of my business when I was working earlier. There was this process basically that really wanting to just get rid of that human element, and it didn't matter where it came. Whether it was somebody locally looking into local searches, working with a solicitor who understood what was going on with you, any old quick way of actually getting through the whole thing. Now we do need part regulation. I would welcome some, because that will sort of, if you like, give you the definitive rule about this will happen. However, we need to be careful how we do it, and this is where there are other movements about. It's not just Silas with his movement, but Wiggy-Wham has been sort of working on this system now for over 6 years, and they've spent a long time on that, and other people are just trying to jump on the bandwagon. What great announcement last week. Let's all, as Zara said, let's have another portal that you can spend some money through. We don't know anything about searches, we don't know anything about conveyancing, but we can make some money out of it. Not at all.
We've had a last minute comment from Christine, who's a friend of the show. Lead generation platforms are bleeding agents, broker and solicitors dry. The professionals are being fleeced. I'm not sure fleeced was the word I was going to use, but okay, fleeced from all angles. This is easily changed. Can I go to you, Zara, for a quick comment on that? And then I'm going to close down. Oh, Zara, we've
Sorry, yeah, we are being fleeced from all angles. But also people need to realise that home owners are being fleeced from all angles. It's not just about the buying and selling process. It's what happens during their ownership. We've got estate service charges on freehold and leasehold properties. And these packs are causing delays. We've got complex legal structures. So putting these little bits of pretty bits of information into packages is not going to solve the issues of all these management companies trying to bleed homeowners dry. And I hear Andy Burnham's trying to change all of this so that you pay an annual tax on your property rather than just stamp duty. So we've got more of this nonsense to come. Whether or not they'll implement it before they get voted out, who knows?
Well, it does seem like sometimes vegetables can last longer than premierships, but we'll see what happens. Thank you so much, Ray, Silas J. Lees and Zara Olibokas, and all of you for watching and sticking with us, and for fair comparisons to members of films and film genres. Thank you for that too. Until next week, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars. Don't forget, tomorrow we've got Cladding Matters at 1 o'clock, which should be a humdinger. Do join us then. Until next time, bye-bye.